Da-da-da-da-da, it's disorganized play. It's disorganized. I do.
This happened every time.
Havana, you don't know? I do a. Wow.
I'm not allowed to watch this show.
It's true. All right, I can't fault you for the fact that you're not allowed to watch. I do a little song. I make up a little song every time.
Disorganized play, and we're playing around.
You were just playing around. I'm following you. I'm trying to follow you.
I didn't.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Lommel. I'm your host for Disorganized
boy.
Play. That's my dog over there, Luigi.
Luigi.
And this is Havana Mahoney, everyone. You recognize her from last night's game.
From all the big
Chronicles.
Films.
Oh, and all of her big TV and films things. Look her up on IMDb, and you will see her there. Luigi wants to be petted, maybe, or probably go outside. Which
Do you want a treat?
is my problem. So we have the bright light of God shining down upon us, which is fun. But thank you so much for joining us. A quick round of applause from BSB Care and everyone else in the chat for Havana's great job last night.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, very good, very
Thanks.
good. And I will second, third, fifth of that, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I definitely agree that it was. I thought the session went spectacularly.
Oh, yay.
How did you feel about it? We're going to talk about it.
Well, it definitely went better than I expected. I don't know what I expected.
That sounds mixed. Well, I guess we'll get into the details of that. But did you feel overall like it was a successful session? That
Yes.
you ran a good game
Yes.
of Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
these things. Yeah, I did feel
Go
good
lay
about
down,
it.
buddy. Go lay down.
But his eyes.
I know. That's how he
They're
gets
so
you.
sweet.
That's how he gets you. Yeah. So you felt. Let's put it this way: at the end of the night, did you feel good about what you had done?
What you had did.
Did you feel good about what you had did? And did you feel like you had a good time?
Yes, I had a great time. It was just everything leading up to it was like stressful and horrible and awful. So.
Right. Sure. That's
But
fine. That's fine.
yeah, when it was happening and after it happened, it felt very good, and I had a great time. And I think everyone else did.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, they definitely did. Yeah. I
think
don't
so.
think there was. I wasn't putting anything on when I said that I had fun. I had a lot of fun.
Anyone find it weird seeing Tom without the wig?
I have the wig somewhere, but I'm not.
man.
I'm not putting it on today.
Not
We're
today.
cosplaying as ourselves
Oh,
today.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Farquaad says my one bit last night was for GM Havana and not for chair.
Aw, thank you, Farquaad. I appreciate that.
So there's a few things that I've kind of written down that I want to just discuss with you, but what you thought, how it went, and just like some specific things that I would like to cover.
Sure.
So what did you do for prep? Like, what was your prep process like, and did you feel like it served you?
I brought it just in case. Well, I typed up like I had 6 pages of just like, let's see. Yeah, like all of these just like
Right.
like just completely filled with I don't know, like I definitely tried to write out, because we talked about on the last Disorganized
On
play
Tuesday,
about making islands rather than like storylines. So I tried to make that where it's like, okay, these are locations, and then I would try to write a detailed description of the location, and then I'd try to think what sort of clues would be there. I tried to write that down. I'd also write down what characters, what NPCs would maybe be there. And then also I would write down possibilities. I'm like, well, I anticipate that they will maybe do an investigation check of some kind here. So if they do that and it goes well, here's what could happen. If it goes okay, this is how it could happen. And if it's bad, this is what could happen. So.
And did you find that was easy to do, or did you struggle with that? Like, oh, there's a lot of pieces here, like good, bad, mixed results, and what character could be here. Like, did you struggle with that, or did it kind of like fall into place after you got 1 or 2 under your belt? Like, oh, okay, well then if that's over here, then maybe these things could be over here.
I think it wasn't really like that technically that hard, but it was more of like getting over myself and just being like, because I would sit down to write it. I probably had like 6 different times where I just sat down and I was like, I'm sitting down to write this session, and I'm gonna do it. And then I'd sit down and I'd just be like so in my head about it.
Right.
That I'd just be like, no, this is all stupid. Like none of this is a good idea. And how am I supposed to like? I'm gonna write all this stuff, and then they're gonna fucking go do something else, and I'm just gonna be screwed. And it was just getting like wrestling myself mentally was like the hardest part of it. Bless you.
Thank you.
You cute sneeze. Was the hardest part for me. For sure.
I don't know that that's a new DM type of issue. I recently wrote an Adventurers League adventure for Gen Con, and I found the same struggle of like you just sort of have to start putting stuff on the page and not get lost in the okay, well what could happen if they go here, and then you just start kind of like spinning off on like that one detail. Like that's what happens to me is like, okay, well what if in the music room, but then how do they what else would be in there? Why wouldn't they? Like you can get lost in the web of possibilities because when you're writing an adventure, it's so open-ended. So many things could happen that I think just like getting something on the page and writing a few options down, like that's a great start.
Sure. And I had that, I don't know if I brought that notebook, but I had like a little notebook that I was just scribbling just ideas in that weren't even like linear or like that linked, but it was like, there'd be like a smattering of like, what the fuck do you do at camp? And then there'd be a smattering of like, what are the personalities at camp? And then there'd be a smattering of like true crime shit, and like things like that. But none of it in any kind of order. And then kind of using what I remember of that and looking back on the notes is like, okay, how does that all fit together? And what can stay and what can go?
So I should have, there are two things that I wanted, well, one thing in hindsight, one piece of advice in hindsight that I should have given you, and then one piece of advice that I meant to give you on the stream on Tuesday that I didn't. But I think when you talk about being overwhelmed with all of the open possibilities, one tip that I wanted to share that I thought of after we turned the stream off on Tuesday was start with a map.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. No. I'm sharing this for the audience, right?
Yeah.
Where I wanted to make sure that everybody.
We did talk about that.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked
last week.
I don't think we talked about it on stream though. We talked about it after.
Oh, did we not? Okay.
I turned the cameras off and you were getting ready to go.
And you gave me the best.
I was
nuggets.
like, oh crap, we should. I meant to tell you to do a map. And I think for a first time DM, that is a way that it's open-ended. It's a format that makes sense, but it's not structured.
Sure.
It just has this kind of geographical relationship, which for a first-time DM I think is a great way to that's your entree into creating the world. As you start putting places on a piece of paper, and that starts giving you inspiration of what it should be and where it should go and whatnot.
So I did think that was really helpful. It's and I was gonna make a map anyway, but of course, after you said that, I was like, oh, I need to do that first.
Right.
I was like, I'll write it and then I'll know what the world is. But it's like having it down on a map, then you can see okay, I've typed out about all these locations, but how do they fit together? Okay, so you're just randomly placing them, but now you can see the logical progression of what they would do. So
if you want to go to the dock, you have to walk around the lake.
Exactly. And if you're at the crafting tent and the murder happens out here and right near the forest, of course they're going to be maybe the person went into the forest and is hiding in there rather than going towards this open field or towards a river that they can only cross at one point. They're going to go this way or if you wouldn't go to a location that's on the completely opposite side of the map after a murder that just happened right here, it wouldn't be your instinct. So it's really helpful to be okay, I'm not going to tell them where they need to go, but I can kind of assume, especially knowing and playing with the players, that it's
so
logically, not that they would have to do that, but
so here's the beauty of using something like this is, for one, it's a funnel for your creativity as the DM, right? It allows you to and then over here there could be, what if there was something in the forest? It gives you a way to focus, and whereas when you're just sitting there kind of writing notes on the page, it becomes this aimless kind of you can always go off down these tangents and different thought corridors that never coalesce into something. So it helps you concentrate your ideas, but then when you're done with it, when you hand it to the players in the session, every player, no matter whether they're new to the game or they've been playing for years, loves a hand. Okay, so we're over here, and they can see possibilities. So it's like this is an incredibly powerful tool that helps you channel your creativity, but it also helps channel the player's focus in a way that reading them a description of, you stand at the end of a dock, there's a beautiful shining lake that's,
Sure, yeah.
whatever. Like, those words people can get lost. But they always they're always drawn to a tangible thing. Yeah. So those were the kind of the two things that. Oh, so that was one thing that I wanted to cover on Tuesday that I forgot that you did, that you already had an idea for. I said, oh, you should do a map. And you're like, I'm doing one. Like,
I opened up my notebook. Here.
You were ahead of the game. So that was good. The other thing in hindsight that I think may have helped is if you had done some of your brainstorming on index cards and kind of divvied them up. So you could be like, okay, what's my cast of NPCs? And just do an index card for each one and write down, like,
Sure.
Chad, he's a bro.
Sure.
Like, you could start there. Boom. All right, that's good enough. Like, oh, maybe he's an elf, too. Okay,
Sure.
great. Then Lindy is da-da-da-da, whatever. But then as those ideas, you just flip them out onto cards, and as you want to get rid of them, you just get rid of the cards. And it's not like a piece of paper where you go down, 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 and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I want to add something to Chad, and then there's no room, or like if you're in a Word document, you're like, oh, now I got to scroll up and find that place or whatever. Just the fact that you can, like, flip those cards around and arrange them whatever order you want. You go, okay, well, this scene takes place at the stables, and it involves the stable guy and this, whatever. Like those elements can all like fit together into a little pack.
Mm-hmm.
There's a program called Scrivener, which basically has like index card functionality built into it. So you can do the same thing, and it'll accept like pictures and multimedia clips and stuff like that. Anyway, that's just a tip in hindsight where when you talk about like kind of getting lost in the forest of ideas, I had that same problem, and it's like, oh, if you could plan stuff on index cards. You can
really map it out. You could be like, okay, where are these NPCs? And I've got an index card for my location, and now they're all over here, and I like that a lot.
Well, and so for what I do for Iron Keep Chronicles is I do something similar where I have a big piece of paper that I put Post-it notes on, and so I will have stuff like, the vampire who offers you a wish, and I'll have stuff.
It was a fucking vampire. I fucking told them. Mm-hmm.
And have stuff like tax toys and that sort of stuff, right? All that kind of stuff. I will have those as little elements that I can track and make sure that, oh, okay, I need to bring this in, da 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 da. Anyway, that's just a related idea.
Is there anything? Vampires?
Is there anything?
Are they vampires? You're not gonna answer my question.
We're talking about last night's session.
You brought it up, man. You brought it up.
I mean, there's people in the chat who know, but they're not gonna say.
They will say. Ping. Thomas is like, y'all. Oh shit.
Emperor Riptide says I use OneNote for a lot of my notes, but it is hard for me to get all those notes to the table without a laptop, and I think that's a big challenge too. And I don't like to run with a lot of machinery on the table.
Does Mac brings her laptop to...
Oh, there's people who do.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I'm just not one of those, like, I get distracted.
I like
also
paper.
I don't find it.
Is that a weird thing to say?
No, I'm with you 100%.
I love paper and pens. I love them. More stationery. Yeah. Send me stationery and pizza. Stationary pizza.
Is there anything else about your prep that was either like that you felt like it paid off, or you put too much work into it, or anything else you want to say about your prep process? Because you had a lot of notes about like, here's what this scene looks like, and you definitely had some very clear ideas about who the NPCs were.
We definitely got through like all of it. I was actually really shocked because when I was talking to people about it, especially like in my channel or whatever, they were like, well, you've 6 pages, like you're gonna get through 1 page, and that's it. And we got through everything except for I wrote 1 paragraph about the stables that we didn't get to, and that's like everything else. So I'm like, I don't know, I feel pretty good. When I was doing it, I thought I was over preparing. It felt like I was over preparing, and maybe I didn't need to like flush things out as much. Because I feel like I did do a lot of improv at the table, as far as dialogue and meshing situations together. So I think if I had more faith in myself to to make that stuff work on the fly, I wouldn't have written so much. But like being the first campaign and everything, I think I just covered all my bases. So
Right.
if anything, I probably prepared too much, but I don't really regret it.
Well, and I don't think that's unusual.
I'd rather be over prepared. Yeah.
And I think that's a common thing for a first time DM too. Is like I've got to get all this stuff. I've got to kind of like live up to what I'm used to in terms of the games that I've played,
Sure.
and also the models that we have for adventures. Especially now in the 5th edition era, it's like you have this huge wonkin' book, and that's a whole adventure. And I think as a new DM, you must be intimidated. Like, oh, I got to produce like as much content as that,
Yeah.
and that's
Well, I
obviously
looked
they're
up-
writing to a different standard
Yeah.
than you are for a single adventure for your first time.
There is a website. I wish I had written it down, but I just Googled like, because I was writing the sessions and I was like, I don't even know if I'm like formatting these in a way that's going to be effective when I'm at the table. And so I looked up like some other one-shot adventures that are from like probably like 70s to 90s, just to see how they're written.
Yeah.
Just to see the formatting. And I actually ended up, like, it was pretty similar to mine. It didn't have like possible reactions like the way I wrote them out. They were more like, because it was D&D and not Beastlings or something. So they were like, if they roll this, this could happen. This could be triggered, or they need a DC save of this. So they had details like that I didn't use. But it did help to look at those to just be like, they are talking about environment. They are talking about successes and consequences.
Yeah.
And they're definitely talking about NPCs.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice to just check in on that format and make sure that it's like...
I think you raise an interesting point, which you've actually hit on something that I see as a fundamental problem with the game, which is I think the format of adventures hasn't changed much since the 70s. You know, there's box text, there's maybe a description of what the environment is like, and then there's this kind of like weird unstructured paragraph that's like, well, if something happens here, here's what happens, and here's who lives here, and here's how to go look up the stats. But there's very rarely something that says, these are 3 possible outcomes. Here's a really good outcome, here's a mixed outcome, here's...
that was
that's
me.
not there. Yeah, right. Well, that's something we talked about, but that's not in the adventure right now. If anything, they have a thing that says development, which is kind of like also amorphous. But the other thing that doesn't happen in the modern adventure format is there's nothing that says, this is the purpose of this encounter, right? This is designed as a combat encounter to drain the party of resources, or this is, in this encounter, the purpose of this encounter is to give the party some clues about what the murder weapon that was used, or whatever, or to lead them to the site where the transformation took place, or whatever it was. Like, there's never anything in an adventure that tells you why this is in here. It's always just kind of like taken for granted, like, well, I wrote a thing about this area, and it's up to the DM to kind of like figure out what's the motivation for this.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a deep cut. Like don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting you to like look at this stuff and recognize this, but the existing models that we have for adventures haven't changed a lot, and I don't think they necessarily serve the type of interactive storytelling that we do in an RPG. I don't necessarily think they serve them very well. It's very much like reading a textbook of like it's like reading a text adventure, you know. Okay, players come in east door, pick up box, open box, inside box is XYZ. When they put the ring on, this happens. You know, it's very kind of like a flowchart, but you never understand the meta purpose of going through the thing. Oh, are we having a long chat here about...
Amy popped in. Hi, Amy.
We're having a Pugmire, or proposing a Pugmire game.
I have talked to Dom about
Beans
DMing Pugmire before.
Yeah. Very good.
There's Beans.
So let's talk a little bit about the adventure last night. So let's just talk on a high level of what was running the game. What was easier than you thought it was going to be?
Well, I feel like just in a general way, it went smoother than I thought. I thought I would just be kind of bumbling the whole time, but there was only like one spot where I was like, when Gaurav rolled really well on that tracking check, and I was just like, I didn't, how, what? And I really had to like stop and like think about how that fit into the puzzle because like for some reason I didn't think about it before, and I was like,
was that the spot where we were like we'd found the two weird flesh piles with the shillelagh?
yeah. And then he
Yeah.
was like, I would like to see where the tracks go from here. And I was like, I did not anticipate that for some reason. Like, duh, you would do that.
Yeah.
But it's like, for some reason, I had like, I don't even remember what I expected them to do after that. I don't know if I had anything
It was like
planned.
they go to the woods. Well,
What happens after the woods? And so, but I did come back from that, and I was like, no, this fits into the story perfectly, because I did put clues. I had already made like a whole scene in one of the cabins,
okay.
and this actually works perfectly. Like, why wouldn't the murderer, after ditching the murder weapon, go and try to find and destroy evidence in Rowena's cabin or something like that? But it did, like, that was the only part where I feel like I was like really kind of just like my brain just like turned off, and I was like, who knows? I don't know. Let's go to the zoo. I don't know. Like,
I mean, as a player sitting there, I could tell, like, oh, she stalled out for a moment, but then, like,
well, I think I said out loud. I was like, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
I'm sorry, I'm new to this. Please forgive me. I don't know. So that kind of tripped me up, but I feel like everything else, I don't know. It went a lot smoother than I expected. I expected to be doing that the whole time.
Okay.
Like someone doing something that I didn't anticipate, or just was like completely out of the realm of what I had imagined, and I just would have been like, just like all night. But it was. I think it's like, I think we have a good chemistry at the table too. So it's like we're good at playing off each other, and I should have like had a lot more faith in that, because it was, once we were in it, it was like all the players were being super supportive of me, and then it was like we all play off each other really well, so it was really easy to like improvise things, and I don't know, wasn't that bad?
That's like that's something you can't always count on as a DM. I mean, there's plenty of people, and it doesn't really matter. Like if you're an experienced DM and then you have players who are fighting you on the rules or having interpersonal conflicts or whatever it is, like that'll wreck your game regardless of how much experience you have. Like certainly experience helps you get over or address those things. Like you learn, like, oh, I better head this off before it gets weird, right? Or whatever it is. But yeah, that you definitely, like, you had an advantage in terms of like question.
No, Emperor says the timeout questions were great. I really think more new DMs need a buddy like Tom to ask questions at the table if they have problems. And he said it was really refreshing to see that. That's interesting.
I think that's we talked a little bit about that Tuesday. Sometimes there's rules questions that you can throw to your player and go, okay, how does this rule happen? But you can also, I've had it happen in other games too, where people go, well, what would you do in this situation? And sometimes that conversation happens after the session, where we go, and I've done it with my players too, where I'm like, God, I feel like, I'm really struggling, and I'm not sure that you guys are getting the storyline, and like, what do you think is happening? Like having that kind of like discussion in terms of, how could I be running the game better? And I think that takes a certain level of kind of openness and humility that isn't necessarily modeled very well in a regular, the DM is the authority in Dungeons and Dragons, and then all the streams that we see, it's like the DM is this know-all creative genius who runs this great game for this terrific cast of players, and you never see them like share that kind of like authority together. And I don't know that. I think the point is well taken, that it's like it could be healthy to have those moments. Of like, hey, what? How?
Well, I mean, and I was trying to think about it. Like, yeah, we're broadcasting, and yeah, it's like an entertainment thing. But if that was a home game, like your friends shouldn't be worried about stopping the game to ask for help. Like,
they shouldn't be. I mean, there's a whole piece of Dungeons and Dragons, or at least just gaming in general. There's that whole social dynamic, right? And we have an advantage in that we are all performers. We're part of a troupe. We're there to entertain and to support each other in playing for our audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of our goals are aligned, right? Whereas in most people's home games, it's like, well, Jack brought his girlfriend, but she's just not really into the game, and also she doesn't get along with Mike's wife, and like there's a whole bunch of social dynamics where people like are there, maybe aren't necessarily there to play and to play together. They're there because I want to spend time with my husband, and I don't mind rolling dice, but it's not something, or like the DM is running a style game that you just don't like, or whatever it is. So it should be that way, but we have a specific situation that is different, I think, than most home games. It's a very common, I hate to say it, it's a very common struggle where this one player is not getting into it. They don't like what's going on, or they don't get along with this person.
Risky asked you.
Yes, this went back, right? Are you talking this one back here?
Mm-hmm.
Risky Pixel says...
Question.
Tom, how... I assume this is how Risky Pixels speaks.
Oh,
Tom,
he's Canadian.
I'm not gonna...
Tom.
You can do the Canadian accent.
No, I don't know.
I'm married to a Canadian. I'm not gonna... I know better than to risk my life that way. Well, he's probably learned the Queen's English. Tom, how did it feel to take over for another PC? Is that nice?
I like it, yeah.
Was it weird, especially with the other player present? I thought it went great. It was interesting. Like I should have had more notes. Like at some point you said, "Oh, I wish that I had more notes on stuff that Tom's DM mannerisms, so I could throw those."
Yeah.
And I wish I had made a few more careful notes about some of the things that your character did. But I thought like it was fun to be able to kind of like play into the things that Avril does. And going back and rewatching the VOD, it was like, oh, I really did not do a good job of getting that accent right.
No, I thought you did a great job. Yeah,
it was all right. And so it was fun. It was fine. I had a good time with it. I will say, like the whole idea, I wanted to make sure that like the stunt of us switching roles really was the stunt of your cosplaying Tom DMing.
Yeah.
And I'm cosplaying Havana playing Avril.
Sure, yeah.
As opposed to, oh look, a guy is wearing lipstick and a wig, haha, isn't that funny? Like,
it was really funny.
I know that like Twitter doesn't necessarily lend a lot of context to what's going on, but like that was something that, I sent my wife a picture and she was like, "Are you sure about this?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm cosplaying her. Like, it's not the idea that a guy who's presenting as femme is a joke. Like, I didn't want that to come across at all.
I mean, I think you very, like, with the lipstick and the wig looks pretty, better than my hair, but really similar. And then the sleeve. No, I thought it was a delight. I don't know what I could have done to make my Tom cosplay better, but...
my wife was like the hat was hilarious. She was like, she even said to me this morning, she's like, "I can't believe you loaned Havana one of your hats." And I'm like, she brought that herself. That was her.
That's my hat. But no, I thought you did a great job playing Avril. I think like 90% of everything you said and did was pretty on brand for her as a character. The whole like racist against dwarves was like not.
I don't think she was being from my perspective, she was being fussy about what she was going to have for breakfast, and like you presented it as, here's your slop, and I was like, Avril is not going to eat slop. She's not going to tolerate that.
But she didn't need to be like, I don't like dwarven food. Like, it was a camp food thing. It wasn't a dwarven thing.
Fair enough.
So.
Yeah. I put a
and
little
there was
bit
like
of
a couple other things. I forget, but I was just like, I liked how we should have had a scorecard going, because I think I said like, that's on brand, that's not on brand. So
yes, you did, yeah.
I should have had a chart.
Ding. Yeah.
How many times was Tom on brand? How many times was Tom off brand?
So, very good. BSB Care thought I was fairly on brand. All right. Very good. So I have a. So what was we talked about what was easier than you thought it was going to be, right? Like you're very prepared and like uh, you felt like improvising with the players and actually running the game was easier than that. You stalled out at that scene in the woods where it was like, where do we go next? I also felt like we hit sort of a speed bump at the very end where it was resolving the doppelganger situation. Where, from my perspective as a player, it seemed like the party was like, let's murder these guys. I thought you had a different idea of what the resolution was. Is that accurate, or how did you feel about like the final confrontation with the two doppelgangers? Actually, I have a question before that. Were you at all like worried, or did alarm bells go up the first time? And I think I was the one who brought it up. Was like, oh well, what if it wasn't even him? What if it was a skinwalker?
No, I kind of got excited.
Okay.
I mean,
you weren't worried like, oh no, he's onto the whole plot. The mystery's unraveling. How do I make this harder for them to figure out?
I mean, it's still, even if that's the idea you have, it's still steps to know you're right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also has to be like, the whole party wasn't like hands down agreeing with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Okay.
So I was kind of just like, oh, okay, yeah.
There it is.
But
Yep.
but also I don't know that a lot of the party was taking you seriously.
That may be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what
we
was
missed Amy's question.
Oh, that's right. Amy.
Did she repost it? Oh, you saw it?
Amy wanted to know if you had if her song DM's Lament had a extra special meaning now that you've been through this this process.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's what she said.
No, I missed the question.
She said that. Wait, stop. Oh boy, I hate not having my mouse available. Hey Havana, did it give you a new insight into my DM's Lament song?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Amy with the plug. Yeah, I definitely think I had a much better time than the occurrences in that song. But it was fun to be on the other side of it and be like, oh, this is how Tom feels every time we just go on a total tangent and can't stop giggling about weird words or something. It's like, no, I'm just about to introduce a cool plot point, and you guys can't stop giggling.
Yeah.
Blah blah, but I don't know. That was kind of fun to me to get to see on the other side what that is like. But
I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I didn't have a
like,
negative experience.
Like
so.
letting it's hard to balance that, like letting players kind of like unwind and like work through a bit or laugh about something
Sure.
and kind of like joke upon joke, and then at some point trying to like rein them back in and go, okay, now we're going in this direction, or refocus their attention. That's always like. That's just one of those balancing. You can't have too much one way or the
Sure.
other. Is the hard part. So what was your concept of the final encounter versus how it played out? That's kind of maybe my next question. It's like it seemed to me like we were kind of trying to negotiate this thing where the players wanted to murder the doppelgangers, and I thought there were some hints that you were dropping as the DM, like Lindy is the evil doppelganger who wants to murder people, but Chad is the good doppelganger. You could somehow befriend him or whatever.
There's definitely a lot of options, and I didn't like have a conclusion that I wrote out for that. I was like, you encounter them, and then whatever happens.
Okay.
But it was hard as the DM, because I know if I was the player, I would have been like, okay, but wait, like one of these people said they want to kill us, and one of them said don't do that, but we're going to kill both of them. Like, I think I would have had a problem with that as a player, and it's hard as a DM not to be like, but guys, come on!
I think for me it was hard as a player once that kind of like, it was like a combat scenario that kind of came up. And once that happens, you sort of like wipe away a lot of the characterization stuff, like I do anyhow, and it's like, oh, okay, now is the big fight. And regardless of the fact, like Gaurav brought it up, he's like, guys, we're just kids, we're just 12 years old, we're not going to murder anybody. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Watch this.
Yeah.
So, so I think sometimes that, like, or at least for me in that moment, it was difficult to get away from the, combat aspect of Dungeons and Dragons that is like, okay, well, this is how we defeat a challenge, is we have a big fight at the end. So this also came up in terms of things that we've talked about and whatnot, but we decided on Tuesday not to play a regular game of 5e. We decided to play a hack that I put together of John Harper's Wildlings that sort of like blends some D&D aspects or introduces some D&D aspects into the Wildlings kind of mini game that, or one-shot system that he put together. How did you feel about being in this system where you're always constantly like navigating when people roll badly and responding to that, and how it's got more of a like kind of a loose narrative flow that gives you more control versus like playing in a regular D&D game?
I think playing this Beastling system over a 5e game probably was a lot easier for me as far as like it being my first time DMing something. Is like it's, you know, when you can focus on building the story, executing the story, and getting the players through it, rather than like checking the rules or memorizing the rules or like arguing the rules or whatever like that. It was probably a lot easier for me. I think if we had played a 5th edition version of that game last night, it probably wouldn't have gone as smoothly. Just because I don't have maybe the knowledge base to have, you know, just guided it along.
Well, and there's certain moments too in like in D&D where like in that final encounter we would have rolled for initiative, and now all of a sudden you're fighting that whole thing of like Gaurav wants to do something, but it's Eric's turn, but Eric wants to wait for Gaurav to do his, you know, like all of those kind of mechanics start to like line up and intrude on what the story experience is. It, like, for better or for worse, but it changes the experience at the table. What did you find most challenging about running Beastlings?
I guess only the really big snag was just like when Gaurav rolled really well when I didn't expect him to.
Okay.
And then, but I don't know. I think it's a really easy, fun system. That it's just like it really caters to a narrative storyline, and like the critical failures on it are very fun to play with, and the fact that you get to make up the you know, benefits and the consequences of the rolls is, I don't know. It's like exciting and makes it fun, but I don't know.
Where did you come up with the idea of the wild magic table and the crystals and the God's Eye and stuff like that?
Well, when we were playing in our last 5th E game on Saving Throw, we had Meister Burger, and he has wild magic, and I always just thought that was like so fun. And I didn't start there, but I was like, when I was coming up with lists of craft activities or camp activities, I thought about crafts, and we were talking about how, like, okay, how can you, yes, this is camp, but it is a camp in a magical high fantasy universe, so how did those camp activities now become extraordinary, and what changes it? And I was like, okay, if you're making a craft, but now you've actually made some sort of magical tool, and I was like, well, how do you assign that? And it just felt fun to like have it be random and have it be based on the wild magic table, just so that it's like, oh, don't have to assign like they all do the same thing.
Right.
It'd just be interesting to be like, oh well, and now and I liked the concept of like, if you fail it goes off right then, you know, and what does that cause to happen in this situation, and or if you know, or if you roll well, like, and maybe because they're kids, they don't have weapons or anything, so it's like maybe you get something that you can use either against like this final situation or to help you find clues, or because there's like they're not, a lot of them are not super effective spells, but they're interesting and can be applied in very unique and clever ways. So
I mean, I thought that was just a super fun, like, that was a twist that I was not expecting. Was okay, now that you've made these things, they have magical powers. I was like, oh, that's awesome. That was super cool.
I liked that you just grabbed some and you didn't know what they did.
Well, I was just being Avril.
Yeah, no, it's totally
part of it was
on brand.
I was thinking back to that session 0 and like what happened in that session 0, and you walk into the town and it's cursed and everyone is paralyzed, and both you and Amy are like, okay, let's go steal stuff. So I was like, that's gotta come back, right? There's gotta be a thing where I get to steal stuff.
Okay. Amy wanted to steal stuff. I was supporting her. I'm gonna lit that house on fire. That was like a nightmare.
But also I know that you become a rogue, right? And then and down the line you become very focused on like taking stuff and exploring every room.
Sure.
So let's go back to
I think
a couple of questions. James V had one. Let's go back to that. Now that you have done the DM's job, Havana, do you think this will change how you play?
Probably not. Like I wanna say yes, of course, but I think knowing me, as soon as I get back in my usual chair, I'll go back to my old ways.
Very good.
Maybe I won't laugh as long. I don't know. I can't promise anything. I can't promise anything.
BSB Care wants to know what you would have done if you had rolled the fireball on Wild Magic.
If Gaurav had just, is that what they mean? Like the one that went off automatically?
There's an entry on the thing where the fireball is centered on you and goes off in like a 20-foot radius. Like that's, instead of being able to shoot a fireball goes, you explode basically.
Oh god.
Or any similar effect where it would have been like, because there's stuff
damaging. Well, I was kind of like, if someone failed, I kind of was anticipating something tragic happening. So I guess if that had happened to Gaurav when he failed to make his God's Eye, it probably just would have burned down. I mean, it was a frickin' tent. Like, they just would have burned down.
But it goes off like in a 20-foot radius. It probably would it have killed everybody in the party? Would that have been the end of the session? Like,
I mean, it's a beastling system, so I could have been like, right? I could have been like, okay, here's what actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, you can bend it whatever way you want.
It shoots directly into the air, the tent catches on fire, everybody has to evacuate, and as you exit the tent, you find a dead body. Double chaos. What a treat.
Sure.
What a treat. But I don't know, if someone had gotten that as a charge in one of their God's Eyes, that would have been really effective to use against the doppelgangers at the end of the game.
That would have been fun to like click off and throw in there or something like that.
Boom!
Like a grenade.
Oh my God's Eyes ruined.
Grading asks the question, and this is an interesting one to be sure. If you had to run another session with the same characters, do you think you would do another prequel episode or something completely different? I don't know. Why don't we each take that question? If you had to run another session with the same characters, do you think you would do another prequel episode? Would you do another flashback to their youth? Or would you do something like in the future or try and pick up the storyline? Or would you do a sequel to this episode? Do you have any idea?
I mean, if we did this again, I would probably do another prequel. Just because, I mean, I never wanted to do a succession or like the next installment of Iron Keep. Because it's like, in my mind, that's very much like yours. And I wouldn't want to ruin it or take it in a direction you wouldn't want it, or or you have to like trading off like that, like being okay, you run the next session, all right, like that seems really clunky. And it's like we definitely have like a vibe going and an energy about the campaign, and I think it would just be different if I tried to continue that. But it's like with doing these throwback things, and especially using like another system, it's like they don't need to vibe the same because it's like so much earlier, and it's like we don't need to take it as seriously because there's not going to be like dire consequences because we already know in the future they are alive, so it doesn't have as much of an effect as on the main storyline or the main energy of the campaign.
It's weird because you're doing a flashback, it doesn't have the same seriousness of
For sure.
You know, but it does have more drama, I think. You know, like it can be more dramatic, but not as serious. And drama in terms of, oh my God, you know, like the depth and height of emotion that happens, as opposed to drama in terms of oh, Luigi, wild Luigi. Luigi he's camera shy apparently.
He's like just too short, barely to
just
get
barely
on the camera.
We could adjust. He's getting fussy. Maybe he's gonna lay down. Seems doubtful. He wants to go outside. We've got 10 minutes left, buddy. We'll get there. All right. So, DJ Regular wants to know, did you trim down or alter the wild magic table at all, or was it just as is? I think with the players being kids, the counselors might have erred on the side of the kids not accidentally causing huge damage or self-harm.
I did not edit it. I think the intention is that you're being walked through it and you wouldn't fuck it up. But Grav rolled a 2. So he fucked it up. So I think even if, like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's probably an unexact science how they're determining what charges are in the crystals.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
That table is all over
Well, and
the
I
place.
mean, just as far as the concept of, like, what the counselors know about what the crystals would do, it's probably not a perfect science. But also, it's like, even like Fireball or something like that, if it was a charge in a God's Eye, you wouldn't necessarily use that for bad. Maybe they would expect you to use it to start a campfire or something like that. Like, there would be more innocent intentions behind it and assumptions about what that would work. But there's so few options on the wild magic chart that are really violent.
Yeah.
Like, most of them are like, you turn blue, you
Right.
levitate. Gregory, aged 10 years.
Butterflies show up or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of it is really pretty harmless already. It's mostly just funny. But if something, so I think that's kind of like the mindset the counselors would have been working under too. It's like, well, most of it is pretty harmless, and the things that aren't, like, we can use them constructively.
Right.
If you don't fuck it up. So.
All right.
Yeah, let's do a prom. Let's do a
dun.
prom episode for sure.
All right. What other? Okay, very good. So I guess the last segment here that I want to just kind of wrap up on is, you've been through the process now. You've written your first adventure, you put together your first adventure and run it successfully, and everybody had a good time. If you were to sit in my seat and find somebody who had never DM'd before, what would you tell them? What are your tips?
Oh God,
Having just done it, like having just done.
If I'm qualified.
No, you are qualified, because like I'm trying to imagine being in your position, but the fact of the matter is I've not been in your position for a long time. So you were just in the spot where you're this newbie. You were overwhelmed. Oh, why are we doing? Why are you guys putting me in this spot? You felt like legitimately kind of put upon, or at least put in the spotlight in a way
nervous,
that you were,
anxious,
you weren't 100% comfortable with. So having that now gone through that and run the game, and I think we all agree that it was a success from your side of the screen, a success for the players, and it was a success for the people who watched it. Like, it was a fun experience. Do you have any tips? Like, what would you say to somebody who's like, oh, I've been thinking about trying DMing too?
Well, I don't know. I think this system is like a really good place to start, or something, Wildlings, or something similar that is definitely indicative of running like a 5th edition game, but much more simpler, and it leads to more like improvising and role playing, and it kind of creates big bold choices for you. So I don't know. I would definitely try and start. I feel like good that I started here rather than straight into a 5th edition game.
I will chime in for a minute here and say that I think you helped yourself a lot by creating very specific characters. Like, you knew who Chad and Lindy were, and you knew what Gregory was going to be like, and Gregory's girlfriend or whatever, and all that kind of stuff, right? So you had, like, that's not in Wildlings. That's not in the system.
No,
but you had made that, like, you knew who those people were, so that when it came time to improvise and interact with them, you had a voice for them, you had a point of view for them, you knew what their goals and motivations were. So it's not just like you did extra work on top of just like letting the system support you.
Oh yeah, but I mean, compared, like I would have done that same work for a 5th edition game, but it just would have been more bogged down by me having to like look up the rules every 2 seconds.
Right.
Or whatever.
There's a
What's
temptation.
initiative? I don't.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, or along those lines, like, oh, how many hit points does Chad have,
Gotta
or
keep track
what's
of that,
what's
and, yeah.
Chad's persuasion score, or because you're gonna probably have to like roll against
Sure. Yeah.
players
Yeah,
for
and
that
like
sort of
rolling.
stuff.
Yeah, rolling against each
Yeah.
other, rolling to attack. Like it's just a lot of extra nuts and bolts on top of you just trying to get a story out of your system, which is like I want to get there for sure, but this was a nice place to start. And I guess the other thing I would say is don't get too in your head about it because if you have a good team too, like they're gonna bring out a lot of the story for you, and they're gonna infuse a lot of their energy into the situations that you're trying to put forth. So if you're worried something's like not exciting enough or not dense enough or something, just remember that there's gonna be X number of people there to help build up that story with you. So you're not like alone. It's not. Yeah, you have to run it and you've got to bring the bones and stuff, but I don't know. I feel like everybody at the table was like, the way they were role playing and the way the actions they were taking and the way they were rolling. That as much as what I had written filled out the story, filled out the narrative. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think it's better to just get it out of the way. I don't know. I'm glad. I'm glad. Chat donated for me to do this because I'm sure I would have put it off till the end of time.
Yeah,
that's something I want to do for a while, but I was too freaked out in my head about it to like pull the trigger. So,
well, I mean, I'm glad that they donated to make it happen too, but also I wouldn't have put you in that situation if I didn't think that you would be able to rise to the occasion.
Okay.
Like I knew that you would be able to put together a really entertaining game, and I guess I have a few other things that maybe I would cover, but I think probably the best thing to kind of like tie this all up together is, from my perspective, when we talked about this on Tuesday, and I said, what do you think about running? Oh, I'm thinking about doing like a kids camp. I was like, oh great, that's a terrific idea, and we're going to run a flashback, and it's going to be teenagers. And I'm like, that's really engaging. Like I said, that's a really loaded experience. There's a lot of things that you can twiddle. And I said, well, so what is it kind of going to be about? And you said, I'm thinking of doing a mystery. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, like that's a tall order. Like that's a very to me, I look at that and I go, that's a very difficult scenario to write up and to tackle and to successfully execute. Like a much easier scenario would be a dungeon crawl of you've been given a quest to go rescue whoever or to go get this thing out of this thing, and here's 8 rooms that we go through, and there's a couple fights and da da da. And you kind of like approached this from my perspective as like, you tackled one of the hardest scenarios to put together, and you pulled it off in a really fun and entertaining way. And I'm not saying that it was like you didn't make it into this super convoluted mystery, but given the time that we had, it was enough mystery for the one session, and it played out in a way that was fulfilling and satisfying. And when you said on Tuesday, I'm thinking about running a mystery, I was like, oh boy, I hope
boy, oh boy, all right.
You're grabbing the bull by the horns at that point. So that's so. So kudos to you for tackling this really hard. I think one of the hardest types of adventures to write, and then pulling it off.
Thanks.
If you guys, if everyone at home is curious about the Beastlings system that we keep talking about, John Harper created an outline of a game called Wildlings. It's really always been sort of a work in progress that he's never finished, but he's got like a 3 or 4, 5 page PDF out there at 17 Designs. If you Google Wildlings, you will find that, and then somebody else has sort of taken over that and kind of like embellished it and whatever. I decided to take the fragment of a game that he put together and put my own spin on it and create this Beastlings thing. So if you're a Patreon backer at the $25 level or higher,
I think Emperor just subscribed to our Patreon.
Oh, great!
Thanks, Emperor.
So then you will have a I'll make sure that Dom sends out a link to. For all of our Patreon backers who are eligible to the Beastlings character sheet, and you can see what we players were using last night. And if you Google Wildlings, you'll have a better idea of kind of how the whole system kind of gels together. So for those of you who are lost, like what is this thing that they're talking about? If you back our Patreon, you can get a more specific idea of exactly what we're running. But if you just Google Wildlings, you'll have a concept of what the basic framework was. All right, that is our hour. What else does anybody have to say? Yes, BSB Care points out that it was Buffalo Bill that wore the skin in Silence of the Lambs, not Hannibal Lecter. Fair enough.
But the argument is that Lecter wore the face. It's the face of a guard over his and pretends to be hurt. Jesus Christ. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Don't worry, the next game is going to be based on The Usual Suspects, and I've seen that much more recently. So, yeah, that's it. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This was a really fun and interesting experience for me. I thought it. I hope it was a fun and interesting experience for you.
The game or this today?
Well, all of it.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad.
I mean, I'm glad you came over and we got to talk through it and like talk through your ideas on Tuesday, and then now talk through how it went on Thursday. Like this has been a fun experience for me, but I hope like just having DM'd, like now maybe some of the intimidating pieces of it have kind of like those rough edges have been dulled. And
I'm sure if I do it again, I'll still get poo jitters, but at least I know I did it once. I probably can do it again.
Okay, well, all right. So let's close on this like final question.
What is poo jitters?
I keep saying final question. It's never the final question. But this is my final question. If you were at this point to run any other game, like if you said, all right, I want to run a one-shot, and it doesn't have to be related to the Iron Keep Chronicles.
Sure.
It could be like, has this opened up an idea for you? Like, oh, now that I've tried it, I've always thought about X and such. I'd really love to run just a one-shot game about what? Like, what would it be?
I'd like to run Pugmire.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I like dogs. But I don't know. I mean, I'd like to get to a place where I can run a whole 5th edition campaign, but
that would be great too.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would want to write a whole one. I want to just run one.
So I have done both. I have like written the whole thing from whole cloth and like put it all together, and then I've also like obviously lately like run stuff out of books, and I've mentioned this on the stream before, but I find having the stuff in the book as the base material, and then I add all kinds of embellishments and stuff to it, is just a lot easier. It still gives me the creativity to inject my own stuff in there, but it's not that slog of like, okay, what's going to happen next? Yeah.
I mean, I wrote 6 pages for a one-off. Like a whole campaign would be like.
But you used it
novel.
All, right?
I know, that's what's terrifying. It's like, like if I wrote like a whole campaign, it would be like 200 pages.
So my other question about that though is, now that you've done it once, if you were to run a one-shot one more time, would you write as much or would you write less?
I might write a similar amount, honestly.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious.
Because we did use all of it, and I think, like, having that safety net of, like, if I forget what the fuck is happening or where we are, it's nice to have that to, like, check in with. But I might keep it a little looser But I'd probably still write out
Yeah.
a lot about like about the characters and the locations and stuff.
I think I think one of the reasons the game was so successful last night was because the amount of prep work that you put into it. You know, and you may have felt like you over prepared, but then as we saw at the end, you used 90% of it, so it really paid off. All right, awesome. Well, good job.
Thanks.
What are you looking forward to at Gen Con next week? Just give us a little taste. Like, have you been to Gen Con before?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
And do you have, like, if there's one thing you can do at Gen Con or that you can get or whatever, like, you have anything on your list, like, I gotta go do this, I gotta try this, or I gotta get this, or play this, or...
I mean, this might be self-centered, but I'm really excited for the panel I'm gonna be on.
Yeah.
I've never been on a panel before, and there's so many cool females on it, and I'm just, like, super excited for that,
Yeah.
so... RPG Earls. RPG girls. RP girls.
Yeah.
Get a ticket, they're free. Going to Gen Con.
That's on Thursday at 1, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
But I'm really excited for that and just like to walk around and see and touch all the things.
I
haven't signed up for any games because I'm just like, I just want to feel it out.
I feel like you're with enough people who have been to Gen Con before and whatnot that like you can either find a way to start your own game
Friday
or find your
Friday
way...
at 1 p.m.
Friday at 1 p.m., sorry. You can either find a way to start your own game or find your way into a game.
Sure.
Like to me, like the gaming part of Gen Con is always the easiest part.
Sure.
Because I'm not super fussy about what I play. Good. Well, I'm curious to see how it goes. It's your first time at Gen Con.
I'm open to all possibilities.
I will just warn you. It's a lot. It's going to be so many people. It's so many people.
I've been to San Diego Comic-Con before.
Yeah, if you've been to Comic-Con, then it'll be fun. I will be there as well. I'm not always in lockstep with everything the Save and Throw crew is doing. I am hosting NazCrag. NazCrag is a wacky role-playing based puzzle-solving type of tournament. It's Pathfinder, but it's not a hack and slash type of tournament. It is very centered on telling a story, and you play these kind of zany characters. We have 2 rounds. We have qualifying rounds Thursday and Friday at 1 and 7. Saturday at 1 o'clock, and then Saturday night at 7 o'clock is the second and final round, where out of all of those teams that have qualified, or all the teams that have competed up to that point, we pick roughly 12 or 13 who go on to the final round and compete for glory and prizes. And we've got like 15 or 16 sponsors on board, and we always give away some great stuff. So we're over at the Lucas Oil Stadium. The con has gotten so big they've taken over the football stadium, so that's where we'll be. So if you want to find me in my full Dungeon Bastard regalia, there's a good chance I'll be over there, or I'll be in the exhibitors hall loading Santa's stocking with good treats for the good boys and girls who are named Tom Lommel or Lindsay Peters. So that's what's going on. The rest of the week, let's take a look at the calendar. So tonight it is Never Tell Me the Odds. It's Star Wars Noir with Mr. David Crennan. We've got some special guests coming in from the G and the S and whatnot, so tune in for that tonight at 8 o'clock. Friday, it is the season finale of Black Bag Vikings, our Call of Cthulhu show, so check that out. Saturday and Sunday, we are giving you the weekend to go back and watch anything that you've missed on YouTube, so do that. That's the buzz. We're coming back. So, that's what's going on. I will probably do a stream at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. I'll be back with Disorganized Play on Tuesday, and we're just going to talk a little Gen Con preview, maybe talk a little bit of, like, is there any way that what Havana has put together could play out and have an influence here in our current ongoing storyline with Ironkeep Chronicles. We'll talk a little bit probably about we probably won't talk that much about Ironkeep Chronicles, but we will definitely talk about Gen Con. This marks my Jesus year at Gen Con. It's my 33rd consecutive Gen Con. My very first one was Gen Con 18.
That's
and
crazy.
This is Gen Con 50. If 18 is the first year, that makes this my 33rd Third year. It was tough as a toddler to be in that weird walking kind of thing and just be like pushed around the con, but I somehow made it work. Yeah, no, nobody's buying that, are they? You're right. So I went as a youngster and had a good time, but I wasn't that young. So it's good
I'm
times.
just trying to decide what baby device that you were.
What
Baby device
baby
is that
device?
he's talking about?
Somebody draw some fan art of the baby device. Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. Big thanks to Havana for coming in and giving us a talk here. I was curious about what you thought.
Yeah.
And how you thought it went, and I think it was helpful for everyone at home. So thank you so much for that. You can check out all of our shows. Please, thanks to all of our supporters last night who donated just out of the pure generosity and enjoyment of what was happening. Thank you for that. We hit our goal last night, and that was just tremendously gratifying to see. You can back our Patreon. That's how we bring you this quality entertainment. You can subscribe on Twitch or use your Twitch Prime subscription to sub up to the channel, or just tell people on social media about what Saving Throw is doing, because I really do believe that we're making an earnest effort to be inclusive and a fun platform and a place where people can come together and have a great time, whether they're an old school grognard like me or they just DM'd for the first time. Not that you're not like a seasoned gamer.
It's different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different. So there you go. And thanks to everyone who mods on our channel. Thanks to Flockwad and the rest of you, everyone who backs us. We appreciate it so much. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, let's dungeon! Wait, the mic's still on. Oh no!
I farted.
I farted.